program is brought to you by P. Murphy and Associates, successfully providing IT professionals to Southern California businesses.
Hi, this is Marlene Gibb with What Do You Do? And today's guest is Constance Noelle Hatley. And Constance, what do you do?
Well, I'm a life coach and I work with all kinds of people, but I specialize in working with business people.
And how did you get into life coaching? Explain life coaching first.
Life coaching is when you help people, whether they're going through business issues or divorce or family issues, issues with employees where they're having difficulty communicating. And what I do is I create a safe place for people to come and talk, open up as much as they want to open up. And we do exercises, they do anger work, they do writings, and they get real ugly and get all the gook out so that then we can get to the good stuff.
All right. Now, as a business person, I'm going to play devil's advocate. And you think, okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate because I think it may be in some ways more open to a woman. You're saying this to a woman, but sometimes men have a hard time when you're going to come in here and do anger work, and this and that. And what do men say to you? I think a woman can work with it better. It just seems more fluid for a woman, but a man who has all these rules and regulations within his company, how do you handle that?
You know what? It's kind of interesting because I find that sometimes women are more resistant than men are.
Really?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay.
I mean, everybody kind of goes, "You're kidding, right?"
Exactly.
Or, "I don't get angry."
Oh,
that's why I'm not angry. Not now, but you're getting ready to be.
So what? All right, give me a story of a person that you handled because you were brought in as a coach.
I have one client in particular who owns a film company, and he didn't really like the idea of doing anger work until I discovered he had a set of drums. So I had him set up his drums out in his studio. He had a big studio, and he would go out there when he'd get angry and just beat on those drums. And then he'd do a writing after that. Because what happens is when you hit or when you do the anger work, it brings up one side, because you have a left brain and a right brain.
Right.
And it brings up the right brain feelings because you're getting all the anger out, and usually once you get past the anger, then there's some fear or some hurt going on underneath. And then you do a writing, which then brings up the logic. And we're created in such balance, God made us so beautifully with the left brain and the right brain, that once you bring up the feelings, then you do the writing and bring up the logic. When you bring those two together, you get the truth of what's really going on inside.
Okay, so when you explain this to an owner of a business, how do they respond? I mean, let's take an employee who's not performing, a typical, you've got an employee that has a lot of potential, and whatever they're doing, they are not performing the way you think they should perform. I don't know. I see a lot of potential in a client, and he's not doing what I think he needs to do. I don't know. That's my agenda. I understand that, but he's not meeting up to his potential, and he gives you all kinds of excuses, which is why he can't do what he has to do. Do you bring somebody in a business world and with somebody who's not meeting their potential?
Well,
I don't know if is that a clear question?
Let me see if I'm following what I think you're saying.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
And I'll give you an example, and you can tell me if I hit the mark or if I need to go another direction.
Okay.
I had one client who had an employee, and this employee is so creative and so crucial to my client's business. But this particular employee was so disruptive. They were on two different sides of the continent, and this employee wouldn't return calls. They had their clients waiting on information. This employee wasn't doing his part. When he wasn't delivering on time, and so my client called me and said, what do I do with this? This has been an ongoing issue for 2 years. I said, why am I just now hearing about this if it's been going on for 2 years? And he goes, well, we kind of get past it, and then it gets better for a little bit, and then it gets worse. And
the
right.
pattern.
So I said, tell me about this employee.
Okay.
And he said, well, he looks at me like I'm his dad. He really respects me. He really loves me. I'm the godfather to his children. And I said, okay. And knowing how he talks to people sometimes, because he's very busy, he's very important, he knows a lot of people, and he's very successful, sometimes he can be a little abrupt. So I said to him, is it possible that you said something to him that possibly embarrassed him or shamed him? You know, if you think back, can you take about 10 seconds and think about that? And he sat there a moment and he goes, yes. And I said, tell me about it. So he began to tell me about it. And I said, okay. I said, you ready to do a little work? And he said, yes, because we were on the phone. I said, I want you to get off the phone. I want you to go hit a pillow, do the anger work. And then I want you to use a tool that we have a letter writing tool, which you use a word that I'm not going to use here, but it brings up the anger. So it's not going to fly on this channel.
Right, it's not going to fly. Yeah, right.
Right.
It's okay.
So anyway.
We all know the word.
Okay. So I said, go write that letter and get all the anger out. You know, I hate you for not delivering. You embarrass me in front of our clients. You cost me money. You know, get it all out and be as ugly as you can be. And then once you get done, I want you to turn around and say, dear employee, I started it. I started this whole problem when and then write it out. And once you do that, then I want you to call that employee and I want you to own with him how you started it. And I want you to apologize and set up preventions with him so he can trust that you will do something different in the future. That you're not just saying, I'm sorry, just to get by one more time. Because we don't want that, oh, he gets better for a while and then it gets worse, you know. So we got off the phone. Next day he called me and he goes, you are not gonna believe what happened. And I said, what happened? And he said, I got off the phone, I hit the pillow, I did the writing, I totally found where I started it. He said, I called him up first thing. Oh, no, he said, before I called him this morning, he said, after I got off the phone with you and did all that work, he said, I sat down, I was so excited about my life and what I just found and turning this situation around. He said, I sat down and I wrote 800 and something words of a book that I've been writing, meaning to write for years. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm your muse. And he said, you're totally my muse. And so I thought that was really exciting because not only did he open up the channels with this employee, when he called this employee the next day and owned, this employee not only turned around, he ended up sending him to China on a huge project, which this employee landed and brought back. He's brought in a lot of business on his own, and he's not even in sales for this company. He does editing for this company, and evidently he's just a whiz, a master at editing. So it's like it's totally turned things around for this, not only for the employee, but for this CEO and for their company and their clients that this particular employee is dealing with.
And things have been working out real well. Mm-hmm. And you're with this company. Now, let me play devil's advocate. What if you go to a company, and you're very charming anyway, so I think you can get away with a lot that a lot of people couldn't get away with, right? You. Telling them what to do. But you get CEOs. And, you know, I was in business with my husband. You know when the problem is not the problem. You know what they say the problem.
Yes.
Like we had one client, I remember this, and he went through girls and young women in the front office, and somehow it never worked. It was just this constant revolving door.
Yes.
And we were always doing the training. Of course, he'd get mad at us because we charged him to come in to train all the time, right? But, you know, and he was always blaming these young girls.
Right.
And I mean, maybe they last 2 months or something, and then another one, because I guess he was mean. He was just very mean, and which I couldn't say to him, this is really your problem. I mean, what do you? How do
Why
you?
not? It's true.
Yeah, but I know how to. I didn't know how to resolve the problem of his problem.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a tough one.
But that happens. Those are common things in business. When you see these revolving doors, people.
Yeah.
I mean, most people know good businesses from poor businesses, and you hear it real fast. How do you handle stuff like that?
Okay, so what's really the question?
The question is, how do you get into places where they say it's one thing, and they really don't want to listen to you? They bring you in, but they don't want to hear the true answer. They want it to be a make-up answer. That happens a lot. You know that.
Yes. That's when humor becomes really, really important. You've heard laughter's the best medicine. There are a lot of things that you can get by with and say with a smile on your face and using really gentle humor. And by gentle humor, I don't mean by being sarcastic or caustic, but by saying it in a cute, funny way or asking a question, something like, "Are you sure it's all them?"
Of course
you're
it
still
is.
here. Are you sure it's all them? Because a lot of it's minor. We've seen them come and go, and you're still here. And if they're coming and going, are we sure that it's all them? Is it possible?
Of course it is.
Is it possible that it might just be a teeny bit you? Now I want you to take 10 seconds, and I'm going to ask that question again. And the 10 seconds is not for you to sit there and go 1, 2, 3. It's not for you to count. It's for you to take a deep breath and check in, internally and say, "Is it me?" Because when I ask you that question, if you feel like a little sting inside, that's probably a truth you're not wanting to look at, which is great. It's great to feel that because we're made
To feel that.
Well, yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good thing to have active. If it's not active and you're not having a conscience, then you're really disconnected.
So you know how to get around all these situations.
Yeah.
Let's go.
And if you try one door, if you don't get in that door, you ask another question, you try another door, and you just keep trying different doors in just by asking questions over and over and over. But here's the key. If somebody's open, you can get in. If somebody's closed, they're not ready to receive, they're not willing to listen, they don't want to hear it. That's why it's really important. Sometimes I say, how much truth do you want to hear?
Well, that's an honest question because, I mean, if your business or anything that's happening to your business and you personally, you have to know the truth.
How many people do you think tell the guy at the top the truth, the man or the woman at the top?
They don't. They're
very few.
They're so isolated.
They're afraid of losing their job.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, any employee who can deliver the truth, if a CEO is open, and deliver it in a way that is not combative or intrusive or, that really does feel like an offering or a gift, because the truth is a gift when people share it and people hear it and people receive it. It's like employees lie when they don't feel safe.
Right.
When somebody's not a welcomer of truth, that's when people lie. Is because they don't feel like they have a door in to tell the truth. So it's very important for people at the top to have somebody who will come and tell them the truth no matter what.
How did you get into this?
Kind of fell backwards into it, actually. About 18 and a half years ago, I was going through a really painful divorce, and a friend of mine kept saying, "You've got to go talk to this lady. You've got to talk to this lady." And I didn't want to go talk to somebody about that divorce. It was too painful for me. It was so raw. And after about 6 months of my friend pushing me, I said, okay, give me the number, just to get her to shut up and leave me alone. So she gave me the number. I called, and I ended up, this particular woman who, at that time, we didn't know what a life coach was.
No, that was 18 years ago?
18 and a half years ago, yeah.
And that hasn't exploded on the market except, what, the last 10 years?
Yeah, it's been way more recent than 18 years. But that's what it turned into. And what happened is I went in there thinking I wanted to save my marriage. And I ended up losing my husband, but I found me, which was a far better deal. Not because I'm such a great deal, but if you're not connected to you, there's no way you can be connected to anyone else. If you don't learn to love and accept yourself, you can't love out if you're not loving in. You can't give out what you're not giving yourself. So anyway, I found that not long after, probably about a year or so after I started seeing her, I was her third client. Her name was Mona Miller, and she's deceased now, but what ended up happening is I started telling everybody about her. She was so amazing. And other people were telling about her, so she started getting all these clients to the point where she had a wait list. So she had us kind of work with each other and be support partners, but one day she called me and said, listen, I have this new client, you haven't met this person, and I want to have this person call you because you both come from very religious backgrounds, and some of the things were hurtful to you both, and I think you could really help this person. So I said, okay. So that person called me, and so at first she started calling me and telling me somebody was going to call. Then, and why they were going to call. Then she stopped. She'd call me, but she wouldn't tell me why they were going to call. Then a little bit longer, she stopped calling me. She stopped giving me a heads up. So I started receiving calls from her clients saying, hi, my name is so-and-so. You don't know me, but Mona Miller gave me your name and asked me to give you a call. And I'd say, did she tell you why she wanted you to call me? And they'd say, no. And I'd kind of laugh and I'd say, okay, well, tell me about yourself. And they'd say about 2 sentences, and instantly I would hear this voice inside and I'd know exactly what I was supposed to tell them. So I'd say, could I tell you a story about something that I learned? And they'd say, yeah. So I'd start to tell the story, and within minutes they'd either be laughing or crying and saying, that's exactly me. Your story happened to me. I know this is exactly what my life is like. So I did that for years, not knowing that I was the only one in her program that I've learned of today that she did that with. I was talking actually to my friend who was her first client just a while back, and was telling her about Mona having people call me, and I said, how many people, didn't you have people call you? And she goes, no, never. And what I didn't realize is that I was being groomed from way back then. It just took me a while to figure out that was something, that was my calling, and that was something that I could really do to help other people.
If you had, just talking about your purpose and calling, how would you describe the coaching? Is it, you go to school, you didn't go to school, but if you go to school, is it an intuitive process? I mean, talk about what a person maybe someone's watching my show and saying, I would like to be a coach. What would you tell them? I mean, is it an intuitive process?
I would say that it depends on the person.
Right.
For my life coach, she worked with Children of the Night in New York City, getting child prostitutes off the street. She worked with the suicide hotline. Then she worked with what is the women's jail in Los Angeles? It's really, really tough. It's some lady's name. Yeah. She worked with them. She did a lot of pro bono work for them. And then she had a warden from call her to come speak to the death row inmates. She did not have a degree. But she was very, very spiritual, and she was psychic intuitive. And she listened to the voice inside that we've been talking about earlier. And so when I called her and told her I was thinking about doing that, it's the happiest I've ever seen her.
Really?
Yes, amazingly. It really surprised me, because I wasn't sure, would she feel like, this is competition, but she's not. She never struck me as that kind of a person. But sometimes people will surprise you, and she was totally the opposite. Extremely happy for me, and said, I've been waiting for you to decide to do this for years. I'm so glad.
I always think of coaching as a special calling.
Yeah.
I think it's something we have within us.
Yes.
And either we have it or we don't. I don't know if it,
Yes.
I just don't. And I know like we could go, I know there are a lot of coaching schools that you can go to, but I don't know if that, sometimes what you think the problem is not the problem.
Right.
And you have to be able to ask those questions to really dig around to find out what the problem is. I mean, on the surface, I could say, well, I'm having trouble with so-and-so, my boss, and you're going to come in and question me, and what I think the problem is may not be the problem at all.
Right. I mean, sometimes the problem is not knowing the questions to ask.
Right.
I have a client that I'm working with right now who didn't even realize she had a problem with the questions, or that she was using them to kind of put people in their place or shame them or get them into line, and she had a tone. So first of all, I said, I started talking to her about, can I share with something that I've noticed with you? And she said, yes. And sometimes it's hard for her to hear.
I think it's hard for anybody.
Because she feels like she's very loving, very gentle, very soft, and she is. But not at 100% of the time, and none of us are 100% of the time. But she's got such a beautiful, angelic interior. She's just one of the most gracious, giving, loving people. But if she's in a hurry or some of those things, then that warmth goes right down the drain. And so anyway, we're working with her on learning to ask questions. And where we started was, I said, she goes, I don't know how to ask questions. And I said, I used to not know either. I said, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars learning how to ask questions.
That's the one thing I love to do is ask
questions. You got it for free.
I like that.
How lucky for you.
I like to ask questions.
So I told her, I said, what do you most want to know about this person? She's having problems with someone in her family. And they're accusing her of siding with her children, with her ex-husband, against her. I'm like, she goes, where do I, she started saying, well, I would ask her this. And I'd say, yeah, but you're asking her to tell you about you. Why do you think, why do you think I'm disloyal to you? I'm like, wait a minute. That's not what, is that what you really want to know? Is that what you really want to know? And she goes, well, no. And I said, okay, let's get off the phone. And I want you to just start writing questions. Just sit there in the silence and just keep saying, what do I want to know? What do I want to ask? And I said, here's the key. The key to asking good questions is they're not back-end loaded. You're not asking questions with answers in mind. You empty your mind of any answer, and you really go and ask questions because you really do want to know. You really do want to understand this person. I said, if that's not your goal, don't even go there. Don't even waste your time, because you're going to be controlling, you're going to be pushy. You're probably going to get hard, and you're probably going to shove, which is part of pushy.
Right.
So anyway, I said, write some questions and let me know if you need any help. Within minutes, she calls back. She goes, oh my gosh. She goes, do you want to hear my questions? I said, let's hear them. They were amazing. So I said, okay, let's go to the next level. So I gave her the next level to go to. I said, get off the phone and do this level. And she stayed with it. She kept calling me back.
So it's this constant question processing.
How are you going to learn anything if you don't ask questions?
I don't know. I don't feel uncomfortable, but sometimes you have to ask the right questions, the feeling questions sometimes, and the intellectual questions.
Right.
When you're really working on a life problem or a life situation, you're getting into the more feeling problems. The analytical questions are real. How do you repair this? 1, 2, 3
Right.
is a lot simpler than going in.
We like bullet points for those of us who are logical.
Yeah, yes. Wow, this is great. This is real easy. And 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to have this. But the other stuff is missing.
Yeah.
There's not the bullet points.
Yeah, and here's the problem for most executives. They don't want to admit they don't know. They
Really?
don't want to admit they don't have all the answers.
Nobody has all the answers.
I know. But, we look at our leaders and say, you're supposed to know. That's why you're the leader. But let me tell you, the wisest leader of all says,
Ask questions.
hey, you know what? I'm not sure about this. What do you think? They look at their key people that they trust and respect. I mean, if you don't respect them, why did you hire them? Why do you have them still on board? Why are you not finding a way to gracefully let them go and bring in people that you do respect and that do have the ability that you're looking for in your top people?
So you work with groups too, with the CEO and the various groups. We're going to wrap up.
Okay.
So this is your camera over here.
Oh.
I want you to say your name. Say your name, your telephone number, and your website.
Okay, my name is Constance Noelle Hatley. My website is www.constancehatley.com. And my office number is 888-798-9994. Again, 888-798-9994.
Thank you, Constance.
Thank you, Marlene.
This is Marlene Gibb with What Do You Do?
This program was brought to you by P. Murphy & Associates, successfully providing IT professionals to Southern California businesses.